So think about the last time you've used a map on your phone. Maybe you were checking out a new neighborhood, or maybe you just zoomed all the way out to see the whole planet spinning in space. It feels so normal now, right? But what you were doing is using a power that, for most of human history, was literally reserved for gods, the view from above. And getting that perspective, well, it changed absolutely everything. I mean, it's a really deep desire, isn't it? The dream of flying, of just floating above it all and seeing the whole picture. For thousands and thousands of years, this wasn't about technology. It was a profound act of imagination. The dream wasn't just about getting from one place to another. It was about gaining a totally new way of seeing, of understanding our place in the world. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is the oldest map we've ever found. It's from modern-day Turkey, and it's over 8,000 years old. Now, what's amazing is there were no tall mountains nearby where they could have gotten this view. This wasn't a drawing of what they saw. It was a drawing of an idea. The people of Çatalhöyük literally imagined their town from the sky. For millennia, this was the only way to get that God's eye view. You had to invent it in your mind. So long before we had balloons or airplanes, the view from above was already a powerful tool, just one that existed purely in the human mind. It was a way to organize, to understand, and ultimately to control the world below. Just look at this incredible 16th century map. By the time we get to the Renaissance, these bird's eye view maps, they weren't just pretty pictures. They were instruments of power. They were used for military strategy, for urban planning, for asserting control. A map like this turns a messy, sprawling city into something you can understand at a glance. It makes it seem manageable. Because if you can see it all from above, you start to believe you can control it all from above. But then a huge shift happens. Imagination is one thing, but what happens when technology finally lets us see the real thing? This is the moment that the dream finally becomes a reality. Okay, so meet Nadar. He was a French photographer and a huge balloon enthusiast. On the right, that's one of the very first successful aerial photos ever taken, over Boston in 1860. The impossible was now possible. But the idea was so totally out there that just 2 years later, people were still making fun of him for it. That cartoon on the left is literally mocking him for elevating photography to the height of art. The dream was real, but the rest of the world was still catching up. And for pioneers like Nadar, this wasn't just some technical achievement. Just listen to his words here. He felt a sense of higher truth. Seeing the world laid out beneath him like a map, it was a profound, almost spiritual experience. It didn't just change what he saw, it changed how he felt about the world itself. And speaking of ingenuity, you have to see this. Before airplanes were reliable enough to use for photography, inventors were trying everything they could think of. And yes, that includes strapping tiny, lightweight cameras with timed shutters onto pigeons. It's just a fantastic, kind of wild example of how desperate people were to capture this amazing new perspective. So the view from above is no longer just imaginary. We can actually see it for real. And this new vision, it doesn't just stay up in the sky. It comes back down to earth and completely revolutionizes culture, art, and how we think about our cities. The famous architect Le Corbusier really nailed it with this quote. The airplane indicts, it accuses, it passes judgment. From the air, you couldn't ignore the realities of the world below anymore. The aerial view wasn't just a pretty picture, it was a powerful tool for critique. And you can see that critique happening in the art world. Look at this connection. On the left, an aerial photo shows the city as this collection of abstract shapes and geometric patterns. On the right, a cubist painting from the exact same era. As one historian said, the resemblance is not accidental but inevitable. Artists like Picasso were fascinated by how flight just shattered that single fixed point of view we're all used to on the ground. You know, when you're walking around on the ground, you experience a city one street at a time, but from the sky, the whole system is revealed all at once. And what many architects and planners saw was just chaos. They saw a kind of sickness in the modern city. So this new perspective, it wasn't just a view, it was a diagnosis. And, well, when you can diagnose a problem from above, the temptation is to try and fix it from above. This is where the God's eye view starts to shift from a tool of observation to a tool of power. And this brings us to a really crucial idea, the Apollonian gaze. It's named after the Greek god Apollo, the one who saw things from on high. It's that feeling you get when you see everything at once, a total kind of objectifying view that makes you feel like you not only understand the world below, but that you have the authority to impose your own order on it. And, this image is the perfect symbol of that Apollonian gaze in action. This is the designer Norman Bell Geddes with his famous Futurama exhibit. See how his hand is just hovering over the model city like a god, arranging it, controlling it? This perfectly captures that idea of the heroic planner trying to rebuild the world from his high perch of authority. The view from above really empowers that impulse to redesign everything. Now, for decades, this incredible power was reserved for a select few: military strategists, big shot city planners, major corporations. But then, in the second half of the 20th century, a third great shift started to happen. The God's eye view was about to be democratized. And this happened incredibly fast. First, in 1957, Sputnik kicks off the satellite era, giving us this constant eye on the planet. Then, in the 90s, the web creates a network to actually share all those images. And finally, in the 2000s, software like Google Earth puts an interactive, explorable 3D model of the entire world right in our hands. The Apollonian gaze became a consumer product. But here's the catch. Today's view isn't a simple photograph anymore. This image by the artist Clement Valla shows these really weird, surreal glitches that happen when software tries to stitch millions of 2D images onto a 3D model. It's a great reminder that our modern God's eye view is mediated. It's an algorithm's interpretation of the world, not just a straight-up picture of it. So the power that was once held by emperors and planners, it's now in your pocket. The God's eye view is yours. The big question is no longer who gets to see the world from above. The real question is, now that we all can, what are we going to do with that power?